Caleb's Story, Chapter 8. There was school day after day after day. I rode Bess the 2 miles there and back. I carried my notebook with me in my pack, writing in it at recess and lunch, sometimes writing in it when I was supposed to be doing other work. There were 12 of us in our one-room schoolhouse, ages 6 to 15. We all helped each other. Sometimes the older ones helped the younger ones. I taught Lily how to read, but sometimes the younger ones helped the older ones. Joseph was good at addition and long division. He was only 9, but he was the best at figures. I depended on Cassie for news at home during the day. "What happened today?" I whispered. "Nothing. It's too quiet here, Caleb. Only Min plays with me. Stay home from school, please." "I can't do that, Cassie." "Papa doesn't play games with me. He works in the barn all the time." "What about Grandfather?" "Grandfather takes walks. Sometimes he talks to Sarah. He stays in his room." "What does he do there?" "I don't know. Maybe he reads," said Cassie. "Oh, I don't think so, Cassie," I said. It was hard to escape Cassie. She wanted to play. She wanted me to read books to her. She wanted to skate in the slough with me when the snow had been cleared. But every evening I went up to Grandfather's room and shut the door. The next 2 weeks, in secret, we read nearly all of Anna's journals, so Grandfather knew about our lives without him. Grandfather learned quickly, as if he had been ready for this. "Dear Mr. Jacob Whitting," read Grandfather haltingly, slowly, "I am Sarah Wheaton from Maine." He looked at me. "That was her first letter to Jacob?" he asked. I nodded. "The answer to Papa's advertisement for a wife and mother," I said, "and then she wrote to us. See? There." I pointed, and Grandfather began to read. "My favorite colors are the colors of the sea, blue and gray and green, depending on the weather." Grandfather sat back. "She came a long way." "We were excited," I said. "Sarah wrote that she was coming, and then she added something for Anna and me that made us even more excited." "What?" asked Grandfather. "What did she write?" I turned the pages of the journal. "There," I said. I couldn't help smiling. "Tell them I sing," read Grandfather. He couldn't help smiling either. "We were afraid she wouldn't stay," I said. "She loved Maine." Grandfather nodded. He closed the book that Anna had written so long ago. I could tell our lesson was over for today. Grandfather walked to the window and looked out over the farm. "You always love what you know first," he said. "Always," he repeated softly. On Saturday there were clouds in the sky. The air felt damp and raw. I knew it would storm again. It was stormy in the house too. Papa came in for meals, but spent most of his time working, fixing fences, shoveling out stalls, and putting down new hay, making sure the barn was strong enough for winter winds. Grandfather took long walks and once helped Sarah cook a stew. Sarah loved Papa, and she liked Grandfather, but I could tell she was upset with them both for not talking. Cassie talked for everyone, and it was Cassie who caused the trouble. We ate an early supper, the wind outside whining around the corners of the house, the candles on the table flickering. "When I was born," said Cassie suddenly, "Mama and Papa named me Cassie. That was my grandmother's name." Everyone was still. "Grandfather knows that, Cassie," I said softly, warningly. "Grandmother was his wife," I whispered. Papa didn't look up. He kept eating his stew. Grandfather looked at Cassie and surprised us by smiling. "Your grandmother would have liked you, Cassie," he said. "That is one thing I know." Papa stood up, his chair crashing to the floor behind him. Cassie's fork clattered to her plate. Papa's face was dark, and I don't ever remember seeing him so angry. "You," he said to Grandfather, "you know nothing, nothing. You, of all people, cannot speak for my mother." "Jacob," said Sarah, "not here, not now." "Yes, now," Papa shouted. "Why shouldn't Cassie and Caleb know what he is really like, that he left us, that he walked away?" Cassie burst into tears. Sarah stood, her face as angry as Papa's. "Not in front of the children, Jacob. Don't do this." Grandfather got up and walked to the door. "Sarah's right, Jacob. Not here." "Don't you tell me what is right. Not you. Ever," said Papa angrily. Grandfather put on his coat and went out into the wind. After a moment, Papa followed, slamming the door behind him. There was silence, except for Cassie's crying. Sarah took Cassie on her lap. I got up quietly. I went to the door and put on my coat. Sarah watched me over Cassie's head, her face sad and scared, but she didn't stop me. I went out the door. I walked across the snowy yard, the wind tearing at my clothes, snow crunching under my feet. There was no moon. The barn door was half open. I could hear Papa's and Grandfather's voices. I crept inside. I want to know why you're here, said Papa loudly. Why did you come back? I peered around a stall and saw Papa come closer to Grandfather. Sometimes, Grandfather began, sometimes you want to see how things are, how things turned out. Well, there are things you never saw, things you couldn't know, said Papa. I waited for you. Every day I looked down that road, waiting to see you. I was afraid to move. Things were different than you think, Jacob, said Grandfather. Different? How? Shouted Papa. Different than your leaving? Than Mama's crying? Yes, different, said Grandfather. Why didn't you write me a letter? Asked Papa. You never even wrote to me. I wanted to cry out. He couldn't. Grandfather couldn't, but I said nothing. Papa turned to look at Grandfather. I loved you, he cried, and I waited for your letters. And then it happened. Papa pushed Grandfather, and Grandfather pushed back, hard. Papa fell back over the plow and lay still. Jacob, said Grandfather. Papa didn't speak. Grandfather knelt down next to Papa. Papa moaned. My leg. It's my leg. I'll get help, Jacob. Stay still, said Grandfather. Sarah, Caleb, Grandfather shouted, help me. I ran through the dark yard where snow and sleet pounded at me. Wind caught the door as I opened it, bringing in snow and wind. Sarah turned from the sink, her smile slowly fading as she saw my face. When we both ran back to the barn and helped Papa to the house, the worst had happened. Papa was hurt, and a storm had come.